A beautiful elf spirit asks you to become her master. Are you accepting the role? I would say yes, and take care of her dungeon like my life depends on it. Everything starts in a dungeon, a labyrinth where reckless adventurers dream of getting rich quickly. Among the dungeons, there are some so difficult that nobody should ever set foot in them. Right then, a woman's voice can be heard asking her master what she should do. With a villainous expression, her master, surrounded by many creatures, demands that they be kicked out. That evil scene turns out to be not so scary anymore after zooming out a bit. But before continuing, let's go back in time and find the story of an exiled alchemist who became the world's most powerful dungeon master. Right now, we are in the royal capital, Ʀᴜᴜ. Inside the guild, people are speaking about how the hero Alan's party conquered the impossible Ouroboros dungeon. They are truly living legends. No matter how bad the situation is, they can turn it around in no time. It's a miraculous power only given to the brave. The one who received it is Alan, the perfect hero. In another part of the city, inside his alchemy room, a boy is preparing something inside a huge pot. With a smile on his face, ʀᴜᴜ, the alchemist, expresses his happiness after finally making a great potion. As an alchemist, his main role is to support the adventurer's party using items created with alchemy. Right now, Alan, the hero, is entering the room. He is unrivaled, a sword master who conquered countless dungeons. He enjoys tremendous support from people all over the country. While Ʀᴜᴜ is excited to show his new potion, the hero seems uninterested. On the contrary, he came here to speak quickly about something. Without beating around the bush, the hero says straight that from today, he is expelling Ʀᴜᴜ from the party. Wondering if that is a joke, Alan makes it obvious he is not playing around. This was a decision made by all the party members. When wondering why this is happening, Alan mentions the reason is that he found a better alchemist than Ʀᴜᴜ. This cheeky woman, who seems to have eaten too many potatoes since her face looks pretty mashed, will take over. From today onwards, ʀᴜᴜ will be the one to use this room. Nothing else matters, and since he was expelled, Ʀᴜᴜ is expected to leave. Trying to reason, Ʀᴜᴜ mentions the two of them have been together since the very beginning, but Alan does not take it all, calling him a carefree research idiot who's dragging the party down. More than that, he's been an eyesore for a long time, and he could not help it. With that being said, Ʀᴜᴜ is not suitable for the hero's party. Before leaving, this clumsy-looking boy tries to give them his last potion, mentioning it adds new effects to the golden potions. Unfortunately for him, after a small compliment, the new alchemist says even she can make such a potion. She finally understands that he is completely inferior to her. Saddened, Ʀᴜᴜ grabs his potion back and leaves. As he leaves, Alan mentions once again that Ʀᴜᴜ was not worth being a hero's companion and expects ʀᴜᴜ not to let him down. Moving somewhere in the forest, Ʀᴜᴜ is collecting some herbs, looking gloomy, realizing he really got kicked out. Thinking about it, he saved Alan many times with his potions, but there is nothing he can do about it for now. He must sell a few potions and earn some money. While walking by a lake, Ʀᴜᴜ, an alchemist, discovers an unconscious, pointy-eared girl with small wings. As she weakly opens her eyes, she pleads for help and introduces herself as Yuri, a dungeon spirit. Ʀᴜᴜ is surprised. He never imagined dungeon spirits looked like this. Yuri warns that without help, she'll die. She says the only way to save her is by forming a contract. Just then, a terrifying werewolf appears from the forest, an unnatural presence in this region. It lunges at them, and Ʀᴜᴜ barely dodges. Cornered and outmatched, Ʀᴜᴜ agrees to the contract, even though he doesn't fully understand what it means. As the werewolf strikes again, Yuri completes the contract, transforming with joy. A black sphere forms between Ʀᴜᴜ and the monster, expanding and absorbing them both. Ʀᴜᴜ then awakens in an ancient, abandoned place inside a dungeon. Yuri appears beside him, lively and full of energy, announcing that their dungeon is complete. She affectionately thanks Ʀᴜᴜ, now calling him master or perhaps dear. Suddenly, the werewolf appears once more, but Yuri instructs Ʀᴜᴜ to grab something. As her hands glow with magic, a book appears in Ʀᴜᴜ's hands. the dungeon catalog. Yuri explains to Rick that as a dungeon master, he can create and control the dungeon at will. Ready for battle and holding the dungeon catalog, Rick summons 5 eggs that cost between 500 and 1,000 DP each. The eggs crack open, revealing 5 small goblins eager to fight. They immediately attack the werewolf, kicking and hammering it until it's completely defeated. The goblins then celebrate their victory. Yuri reveals she has been searching for a master for 9 years, and that if she didn't form a contract within 10 years of her birth, she would die, feeling like a failure until Rick accepted her. Rick, unsure but determined, promises to do his best and create an excellent dungeon. Overjoyed, Yuri hugs him, promising to always stay by his side and obey his commands for life. She also declares that Rick will never lose to any adventurer, a statement that surprises him, but she treats it as obvious. Yuri then explains that as a dungeon master, Rick must fight against attacks from monsters and adventurers, and tells him she will show him how to prepare for an attack. While the woman is eager to get him started, the boy just realized he had become the enemy of humanity. He will have to face Alan and the others. It's finally time. The woman lays down and is ready to accept anything her masters order as long as he stays with her forever. Meanwhile, I'm sitting alone crying, unable to find a woman to ease my pain from the days my uncle tortured me. Moving on, the boy seems rather happy to hear those words from her mouth and stars giving the woman chores. And those are not the kind of chores that makes her knees red, but the kind of chores that makes her wings weak. She's carrying heavy loads from one place to another. Rick begins bombarding Yuri with requests. Tools like a distiller, a scalpel, and more, without giving her a moment's rest. Even Yuri, overwhelmed by the sudden flurry of tasks, finally asks what exactly he's trying to do. Rick briefly recalls the unusual circumstances under which their contract was formed. With a bit of imagination, and if he ignored the wings and pointed ears, Yuri could easily pass for a normal, cute girl. But he reminds himself not to get distracted. He's here to help, not to fall for her charm. Suddenly, Yuri appears behind him again, peeking over his shoulder, curious about his actions. Startled, Rick throws himself to the ground as if avoiding an explosion, frantically insisting that he's not doing anything suspicious. He quickly shifts the topic, asking about dungeon points. Yuri explains that DP is the energy used to build traps and summon monsters to defend the dungeon. Everything Rick can create is listed in the dungeon catalog. Excited, Rick starts daydreaming, imagining crafting custom items, building his own workshop, and turning the dungeon into an alchemist paradise. But Yuri swiftly crushes that vision. Such luxuries aren't allowed. She explains that the dungeon collects vital energy, which is then converted into dungeon points. It also generates treasure to lure adventurers and searches for high-energy dungeon spirits. But at the same time, wild monsters, like the werewolf, will attempt to invade. That's why defense must always come first. Before Rick gets lost in his hobbies, he must prioritize setting traps and creating guardians. Yuri reminds him that, for now, they only have the creatures he summoned earlier, goblins and slimes. These are G-rank monsters, the lowest possible tier on the ranking scale, which goes all the way up to SSS. Rick recalls they were summoned at random, and Yuri grimly notes that getting 5 G-rank summons in a row is a measly 3% chance. Pure bad luck. She briefly considers spending TP points to expand the dungeon, but concludes it's too risky. Then, with a smile, she suggests Rick could just fight by himself. Rick flatly asks if he looks like the fighting type. Yuri reassures him. Even if he's weak, her loyalty won't change. But Rick barely hears her. He's already focused on a new threat, aware that a group of enemies is on its way. He flips through the dungeon catalog and stops on a page that sparks an idea. He turns to Yuri and asks if summoned monsters will obey his orders. She nods, and Rick instructs her to start preparing something for him. Back in the royal capital of ALJ, the atmosphere is far less cheerful. The hero Alan sits at a banquet with his party, looking visibly frustrated. One of the members tries to lift his mood, while Victor Goldsmith, the team's tank, calmly reminds him that everyone makes mistakes at least once in their life. Alan, however, isn't ready to let it go. He turns toward the group's mage, Matilda Olsen, and questions her decision to use lightning magic instead of fire against Elden Ring. Matilda, flustered, admits she panicked and apologizes. Now Alan shifts his attention to the team's fighter, Fitz Rayon. He questions Fitz about his decision to target a different enemy than the one he was ordered to attack. Fitz simply shrugs it off, saying he thought it would be more effective. But it's Dorma, the team's alchemist, who truly sets Alan off. He tells her outright that her performance has been miserable ever since she joined the party. "Are you kidding me?" he asks sharply. Dorma, unfazed, responds with a cold, "No comment." That's Alan's breaking point. Furious, he yells that the group should have been flawless ever since the useless one left, but clearly, that was just wishful thinking. Victor steps in to calm him down, reminding Alan that Gregan is still new to all this, and that after all, she used to look up to them. But Alan's glare shows only scorn. Regaining a bit of control, he orders the team to take a break. Once their leader leaves, the tension drops. Fitz lets out a sigh of relief and says things feel much lighter now that the trash is gone. He turns to Mary Plate, the team support mage, asking if she agrees, but she dodges the question entirely. Trying to smooth things over, Fitz offers Gregan some food, trying to cheer her up. Meanwhile, in another room, Alan's rage still simmers. Frustrated, he punches the wall. He admits his mistake, his strategy failed, and he lost to what was only an S-rank dungeon. As a hero, he should have been able to clear something even higher, like SS rank. But instead of calming down, Alan explodes again, kicking a chair and shouting, desperate to understand what's holding him back. Eventually, the anger fades, and he regains his composure. He convinces himself it was just bad luck. Had his secret skill activated, he would have handled the dungeon solo, no problem. That ability is monster synthesis, also called fusion. Back in Rick's dungeon, the alchemist explains that this is a pharmacological process, not exactly his area of expertise. Yuri asks if he's sure, and Rick confirms he once read about it in a book. Yuri is genuinely surprised. She's impressed that he memorized such a complicated technique just from reading it once. Rick brushes it off. He claims that kind of thing is normal in his profession. But Yuri knows better. This is anything but normal. Rick estimates the process will cost about 3 DP, and if successful, it will upgrade a G-rank monster to D-rank. And so, the experiment begins. Step 1. Combine the chemical ingredients. Step 2. Extract a magic stone. A poor goblin is selected as the unlucky subject. Step 3. Add the goblin to the mixture. Final step. Insert the magic stone and complete the synthesis. Rick announces each step with the dramatic flair of a mad scientist. Yuri watches in awe, commenting that alchemy seems insanely difficult. Inside the cauldron, the concoction boils and bubbles until, boom, an explosion erupts. When the smoke clears, they're stunned by what they see, a towering, one-eyed beast. An A-rank Cyclops. Rick is both amazed and a little concerned. Will this thing even obey commands? Cautiously, he gives a simple order, sit. The Cyclops drops to the ground instantly, like a trained dog. Looks like following orders won't be a problem after all. However, a Cyclopus, it's an A-ranker. Normally, the summon rate is less than 2% since it's a formidable monster. It's 6 ranks above Goblin. Normally, it shouldn't appear. Yuri begins to wonder what could have caused such an unbelievable result. Could it be destiny? Just as she's lost in thought, her pointed ears twitch, intruders. She shouts a warning, catching Rick off guard. Confused, he looks at her, but she quickly uses a magical orb to scan the dungeon's floors. Through it, they spot a lone adventurer wandering through. Rick analyzes the adventurer's equipment and estimates him to be a B or C rank. Yuri is visibly relieved. Even a group of 10 seasoned adventurers would have a hard time dealing with an A-rank Cyclops. Confident in their defense, she urges Rick to give the Cyclops a command. But Rick hesitates. As the Cyclops begins to move toward the intruder, Rick questions himself. Is he really willing to kill someone? Yuri picks up on his hesitation and asks what's wrong. Rick brushes it off, replying simply, "It's nothing." Resolving himself, Rick gives the order, "Attack." The Cyclops charges forward like a force of nature. The adventurer barely has time to process what's happening before being smashed head-on by the monster's massive club, torn apart instantly, like a toy figure smashed to pieces. His liquid sprays like spilled ketchup before his body crumbles into dust at the Cyclops' feet. Overjoyed, Yuri leaps into Rick's arms, celebrating their first victory and the dungeon points they earned. On the DP board, Rick receives 2,500 points, plus a 1,000-point bonus for defeating a ranked adventurer. Since the Cyclops cost 800 points to create, the net gain is solid. Right now, the dungeon remains at G rank, with roughly 2,500 points in reserve. Still, Rick doesn't look satisfied. Even Yuri notices. She asks what's bothering him, but he dodges the question again. In his mind, Rick admits he felt uneasy, yet despite taking a life, he didn't feel any regret. To level up the dungeon, they'll need 7,500 DP for the next rank. And to reach SSF rank, a staggering 997,500 DP are required. Next, the newly summoned creatures hatch from their eggs. A G-rank slime, an F-rank hobgoblin, a G-rank kobold, and another G-rank goblin. Rick sighs, clearly disappointed by his bad luck. Yuri tries to cheer him up, suggesting they can try monster synthesis again. But Rick doubts he'll get another miracle like the Cyclops. Then, boom, something massive crashes near them. The ground shakes from the impact. A thunderous roar echoes. Rick stares, stunned. The sheer force behind the attack tells him the creature is enormous. Yuri, however, immediately understands what's happening. She explains that the monster is a behemoth, a product of Rick's special skill, synthesis ability. Normally, fusing G-rank monsters would only boost their strength by a few levels. But with Rick, things are different. Somehow, he's able to push monsters beyond their natural limits. Just like with the Cyclops, Rick has created something far stronger than what should be possible. Rick is stunned. He's had this incredible ability all along and never knew it. Yuri gently remarks that everyone shines when they find their true path. Maybe, for Rick, being a dungeon master is exactly that, his destiny. The word strikes a chord in him. Destiny. It lights a spark in his eyes, and excitement begins to build. He becomes eager to test monster synthesis again. The enormous behemoth now lies quietly beside him, yet its sheer presence is enough to make Rick uneasy. Sensing this, Yuri asks what's wrong. Rick drifts into a memory of another behemoth. In his mind, he recalls facing a towering white-eyed behemoth with deep scars etched into its face. The beast's roar unleashes violent shockwaves in all directions. But back then, it wasn't Rick facing it alone. It was Ellen, the legendary hero. Ellen charges in, sword drawn, meeting the monster head-on. Amid the chaos, he shouts to Rick, asking if the potion is ready. Rick, his hands shaking, finishes the brew just in time and tosses it to the hero. As the behemoth lunges forward, Ellen gulps down the potion. A surge of energy floods his body, and with a single, explosive slash, he brings the monster down. The creature collapses at his feet, defeated. The group is amazed and showers praise on Ellen for his strength and bravery. Rick, meanwhile, fades into the background again, just a quiet alchemist. Later, he arrives late to a team meeting, arms full of vials and potions. The others remark on his tardiness, but Rick had been so focused he hadn't even noticed the time. He was busy brewing potions using ingredients salvaged from the behemoth. He presents a stamina potion to Victor, explaining that its effect is temporary, but could be life-saving in critical moments. Victor chuckles, noting that Rick is clearly obsessed with potions. But when Rick offers a vial to Ellen, the response is harsh. Ellen slaps the vial from his hand and coldly calls him useless. The legendary hero reminds Rick of his true role. The only reason he's part of the team is because of his golden potions, nothing more. Victor tries to mediate, but Ellen cuts him off. He doesn't care if Rick is trying hard. To him, Rick is dead weight. The leader insists the group doesn't even need potions, not with a healer and a mage already present. Rick's only task is to never run out of the golden potion again, like he did last time. Back in the present, Rick reflects bitterly. In the beginning, he was the group's only support. But as new members joined, his usefulness dwindled. Yuri then asks, if he was being treated like that, why did he keep joining missions? Why not just stay at the base, build up the inventory, or develop new support tools? Rick answers honestly. Sometimes, the only way to truly understand a situation and react the right way is to be there in person. That's what makes a true alchemist. Rick, sleepy and seeing there are no signs of any adventurers coming, is about to get some sleep, but when questioning the girl if she's not tired, she mentions spirits do not need to sleep. That makes her able to watch over the dungeon while her master rests. And now, while wondering if he could make a pillow using DP, the little fairy wonders what that means, prompting the boy to mention he can sleep hard, meaning to sleep on the hard floor as long as he has a pillow. He even wants to save some DP to make a bed. But this is the occasion we were waiting for. This winged woman places her ass on the cold ground and offers her lap as a mushy, squishy pillow. Even more, when seeing her master baffled by this, she lets him know he can use it as he wishes and that he should not be shy to use any part of her body. Oh, what I'd give to hear those words, coming from someone with XX chromosomes. Next moment, my keyboard is all wet from my tears, seeing this posture I've never been held in. While not able to enjoy it properly, this scummy boy thinks about making a proper bed next time. Meanwhile, I would sell all the furniture in my house to have such comfortable sets of pillows that could be wrapped around my neck and put me to sleep. As she tries to send her master to sleep, the boy calls Yuri's name. He wants to speak about yesterday. He mentions the adventurers and how he ended somebody's adventure forever. The thing is, he did not feel any guilt. Even though he wasn't the one who did it, it wouldn't be strange if he had some feeling as a human. The reason for that is most likely because he made a contract with the winged spirit. For a dungeon spirit, people ending their adventures in the dungeon is nothing more than part of the life cycle. When Rick made the contract with her, he became one with her and the dungeon. Beat me with a chair and spray my face. I only wish I could become part of her as well. And the dungeon. Therefore, this might be the reason he does not feel anything when ending somebody's adventure. Scared, Rick wonders if he is no longer human. But even if that's true, for Yuri, master is master. Only Rick can be the dungeon master of this dungeon. Hearing this, the boy feels at ease. Understanding this is where he belongs. He falls asleep on those fluffy pillows. Meanwhile, in another part of this world, inside a room, there's a small girl asking for help from Rick. Another day, another group of adventurers ready to delve into the mysterious G-rank dungeon. This is a group of intermediate adventurers, the party of Randall Moretz, with an average rank of B. When one of the girls wonders why they are challenging the G-rank dungeon, we learn there is no information on how to clear it, even though it's been a month since it was found. That is the main reason. The internal structure and monster distribution should have already been known, yet they know almost nothing about it. For some reason, this dungeon remains unclear. More than that, it seems even the experienced mappers haven't returned. It looks like a usual trap for experienced explorers. Maybe they were careless because everything was going so well and didn't retreat soon enough. But this party is not going to make that mistake. They have managed to retreat even in dire situations. Moments later, everyone freezes, seeing a high-rank monster in this G-rank dungeon finishing off their party leader. Everybody came here knowing the risk, but had to earn money to support their families. Yet that does not solve anything. Right now, even while trying to retreat, they are being surrounded and devoured. The dungeons do not care if this was supposed to be your last exploration or your first one. From another place, Rick watches how everything unfolds, and seeing one woman trying to escape, he decides to let her live since they made a small mistake. They've annihilated intruders every time, so far. That is the right way to run a dungeon in terms of defense and fast DP gathering. But if this continues, the dungeon's popularity will drop and adventurers won't come anymore. Therefore, they have the survivors spread rumors of the dungeon. Since B-rank adventurers come often, It's not like the dungeon is completely unknown, and they can already handle it with their current strength. That said, right now, more than anything, Rick wants to increase the amount of DP they gain. Otherwise, they won't accomplish much. Devouring her master with her eyes, Yuri mentions Rick being a dungeon master is his ideal job. And there's some great news. With a big smile, Yuri congratulates Rick because, since he drove away the adventurers, the dungeon's rank has increased to F. Hearing that, the boy wonders what the requirements for ranking up are. Isn't it based on the total DP obtained? You need 10,000 DP to go from G to F, an amount Rick has already accumulated. Additionally, the catalog has been updated with the rank up, so now he can create even more items with DP. Looking through it, Rick is surprised to see he can make better alchemy tools. But Yuri doesn't seem thrilled, since dungeon management starts with defense. Since the adventurers he let escape will leak their strength to some extent, meaning a high chance of high-rank adventurers coming, they must increase their strength. That's why Rick bought 10 monster eggs and 5 synthesis materials for a total of 3,500 DP. In another SS rank dungeon's lower layer, someone is executing all the creatures. It's the hero with his party, though their leader looks quite uneasy. Apparently, this guy's skill boosts all his stats dramatically in proportion to danger. If it doesn't activate, it means they are not in a too dire situation. Therefore, another party member, thinking about the others not as strong as him, decides he will leave if this continues. Later, after returning from the dungeon and walking through the cavern, people start talking about the hero's party retreating halfway through the mission. Was the dungeon that dangerous? Hearing this, the hero clenches his teeth in anger. When Victor is approached by the wizard girl, she mentions Alan does not seem like himself lately. That might be due to party member changes, but that's just her opinion. Dorma, the new alchemist, is actually doing well. Despite her dull movements in combat, her potion quality is better than Rick's. So, he doesn't think the difference in alchemists is affecting Alan directly. The little wizard woman says Dorma is amazing, but there's something else that matters besides skills. Everyone has become more tense since Rick left. And that's not just Alan. Looking back, she mentions Rick was a bit clumsy and like a potion. He often didn't observe his surroundings, but was hardworking and always smiled no matter how tough it was. That was something that saved them. While the girl smiles talking about Rick, the other guy agrees, but thinks that's exactly why Alan might have kicked him out. As their conversation ends, the guy wonders if Alan can apologize to the person he expelled. The chances seem to rise since the skill's failure might be mental, suggesting it only corners him more. Apparently, no one knows clearly what triggers the hero's skill, and since now is a bad time to confront Alan, they should watch the situation a bit longer. Meanwhile, in the room nearby, the new alchemist who heard everything is working on something that might be the missing piece of the puzzle. Back in the dungeon, Rick just created a few more A-rank creatures, like the Arachne and King Slime. When Yuri says they should be strong enough, Rick replies they are not. If it's known that a dungeon had a behemoth appear, it wouldn't be strange if an S-rank party suddenly arrives and the monsters are weaker in the second part of the dungeon. It seems there is a limit to how many powerful monsters Rick can make daily. So, he plans to use the remaining DP to expand the dungeon. Before starting, a thought comes to him. So far he only combined low-rank monsters. What if he synthesizes A-rank monsters together? Full of excitement, waiting for his DP to restore and hoping to do that before the next intruder comes, something shows on the bulb. Someone just entered the dungeon alone. Looking closely, Rick recognizes the woman entering alone is Mary, the wizard from the hero's party. Turning a little back in time, Mary was about to leave the guild cavern when she spotted Cheyenne, one of the girls Rick had left alive from his dungeon, crying on a bench. That's how she found out Cheyenne's entire team had been annihilated and that a new dungeon had appeared in the woods. It had been a month since its discovery, and they still didn't know what was inside. Others who tried to investigate found nothing. Just this devastated girl. As Cheyenne kept crying, mentioning how Randall's party was known for its solid strategy, Mary told her that at least she didn't lose her life. That was a blessing in disguise. But that wasn't how Cheyenne saw it. Back then, She should have perished, but it felt like they had let her live on purpose. Not only were the monsters' ranks unusual, but their movements were too precise, as if controlled. It was like they could read their actions. Someone, or something, had let her return alive. Everyone around thought she was imagining things. After all, no one controls monsters like that. Yet Mary didn't think Cheyenne was crazy. Thinking back, something had happened about a month ago, and that control movement, it all sounded promising. And even though it might be hard on Cheyenne, Mary was now determined to find out more about that dungeon.